Hey everyone, so Kid and Law just revealed their Devil Fruit Awakenings. And naturally, Devil Fruit Awakenings have been some of the most mysterious power-ups in One Piece so far, with very little data or explanations to go off of yet. We have yet to even see a Logia Awakening, for example. The only real knowledge we have is that awakenings in general are rare and powerful. However, I think now we have a pretty good framework, at least, to understand the general concept of how awakenings work, and we can start piecing together how they seem to apply to each Devil Fruit type. So Zoan, Paramecia, and Logia. So today I'm going to try and put all of the knowledge and hints that we have about awakening from across the story together to try and get the full picture of what to expect from important characters' awakenings in the future. But before we get into it, make sure to subscribe for more One Piece videos every week. So to be clear, it does seem likely that each of the three categories of Devil Fruits has a different type of awakening, as the Zoan awakenings seem drastically different than the Paramecia awakenings. And so let's start with the Zoans, as they are by far the easiest to understand. Zoans we have the clearest image for because we have multiple examples and extremely high consistency between those examples. Paramecia are of course trickier, as we do have multiple examples at this point, but greater variety in how those awakenings manifest. So with Zoans, it does feel like the concept is already fairly clear, just looking at the awakened Impel Down guards. For Zoan users, all the same effect as far as we can tell. They are similar to normal Zoan users in their hybrid forms, but with significantly buffed stats. And just getting a physical stats buff may seem a little underwhelming compared to what we've seen awakened Paramecia types do, but I think context is very important here, as it seems like the physical stats buff you get as an awakened Zoan may actually be an extremely drastic increase. Because what's interesting is that it does not seem like the Impel Down guards are particularly skilled fighters. It's not like they're superhuman martial artists like CP9, but rather the Impel Down guards seem to be basic, straightforward combatants. Yet, they were still a challenge even to pre-timeskip Luffy. To me, that indicates that the physical stats buff you get from awakening your Zoan may be fairly ridiculously high, as even seemingly relatively straightforward fighters can be buffed to such ridiculous levels thanks to Zoan awakenings. We won't get confirmation on how big the Zoan awakening buff is until we see some significant New World fighters utilize it, but that is at least how it looks like at the moment. And that type of awakening honestly makes sense, as the singular advantage of the Zoan Devil Fruit is to increase physical prowess. So naturally, the direction an awakening would go for that type of fruit would be to amplify that advantage to a much higher degree. And what's really interesting is that these Zoan awakenings also seem to put the user into an almost primal, animalistic state, as though the user is not just having their physical stats buffed, but also that animal side of you is being amplified as well. That is what it seems like looking at the Impel Down prisoner guards, who are all seemingly more beast than man. Now, it's not confirmed if this state is what every awakened Zoan user would be put into, as it's entirely possible that some brainwashing has been done to the Impel Down guards in particular, or the Impel Down guards may simply not have had the mastery it takes to retain their normal consciousness while in awakened form. But I do think it's intriguing to think about the notion that awakening the Zoan fruit may amplify the animalistic abilities in every sense, including making the user themselves more primal. I think a parallel could be drawn to the Minx Sulong transformation, where maybe it puts you into such a beast-like mode that only trained users know how to properly retain their normal thought processes when they go into this state. But overall, Zoan awakenings do seem straightforward, 4 examples to work with, all with the same effect, and that effect, which is a physical stats buff, is consistent with what the Zoan fruits are inherently geared towards. I think that also explains why Zoans were the first confirmed awakened users to be shown in the series, as it introduces the concept that Devil Fruits can be awakened without overcomplicating what that might mean to the reader, as it's far too early to get into all of the possibilities of awakened Devil Fruits, rather easier just to show the straightforward awakened Zoans to get the point across that awakened means upgraded abilities in some sense, and leave it at that. Now, Paramecia awakenings follow that same trend of amplifying the Devil Fruit's natural abilities, but this manifests in a very different way. As I see it, there may be two subcategories of awakenings within the paramecia branch itself. This is not really a theory, this is just me speculating and really trying to make sense of the data that we have to go off of. Now, initially we were shown two extremely similar paramecia awakenings, Doflamingos and Katakuris. They both had the same effect of turning one's surroundings into the same material as your ability and controlling what you create. So for example, Doflamingo could turn his surroundings into strings and then control those strings. Katakuri could turn his surroundings into mochi and then control that mochi. Essentially, the paramecia awakening seemed to mean the ability to extend your devil fruit ability to affect your surroundings. However, Kid and Law showed something a little different against Big Mom. Kid turned Big Mom into a magnet, and Law seemingly injected Big Mom's body with properties of his room. So it seems like some paramecia abilities allow you to extend your devil fruit ability to affect individuals. Katakuri and Doflamingo changed their surroundings, Kid and Law changed their opponent. Again, limited information to go off here. Maybe we get more details on what Kid and Law actually did, as it may in fact be very similar to what Katakuri and Doflamingo did, but there does seem to be a difference at the moment. We never got the sense that Doflamingo could turn Luffy into strings, but Kid is able to turn Big Mom into a magnet. So the primary constant seems to be that all paramecia awakenings allow you to extend the scope of your devil fruit in some way. Law could already create a giant operating room, but with awakening now he can literally make his opponent's bodies his room that he can operate and cause shockwaves within. Kid's magnetic abilities used to be reserved for himself. He was essentially a magnet who could pull or repel metal away from himself, but now he can extend that effect to make other people magnets as well. But Doflamingo and Katakuri extend their abilities by turning the areas around them into the same properties as their devil fruits. So the question that raises though is if we think of Buggy's fruit, for example. If Buggy were to awaken his fruit, then what would extending his ability look like? Would Buggy be able to make his surroundings split into pieces like himself? So buildings, roads, trees, and such all start to split apart? Or would he make his opponents split into pieces? Both hypothetically extend his abilities. One is similar to what Doflamingo and Katakuri have shown, affecting their surroundings, and the other is similar to what Kid and Law have shown, affecting their opponents. But at the end of the day, it seems like it's usually one or the other. We have yet to see an awakened paramecia that can both change their surroundings and change individuals. Now, it is entirely possible that Oda is not giving it that much thought, and there aren't necessarily hard and fast rules to this. It is entirely possible that Oda simply writes it such that, some paramecia awakenings affect surroundings, some can be used to affect individuals, some maybe will even be able to affect both. For all we know, maybe Kid's awakening is just that he can turn anything into a magnet, including his surroundings or his opponents, and that's just the way it works. While on the other hand, someone like Doflamingo can only turn his surroundings into string, and that's just the way that works. There don't have to be hard and fast rules to it. It may just be Oda kind of balancing out mentally, okay, what would be too broken or not. The one universal similarity seems to simply be that paramecia awakenings allow the user to extend their abilities to affect and change what they could not before. However, if I were to try and draw a line to classify what the rule might be and what we can expect of users in the future, such as Luffy, to be able to do, here is my guess. Paramecia fruits that seem somewhat material based, so for example strings and mochi, may have awakenings that allow them to turn their surroundings into that material, which can also then be controlled. Paramecia fruits that seem to be more effect-based, so for example magnetism or creating an operating room, may have the ability to alter individuals in some way. So for example, I would expect Mr. 3, the Waxman, to be able to turn his surroundings into wax, because that is material-based, whereas maybe Gecko Moria could turn someone into a shadow or start controlling their shadow without having to cut it out, because his ability is effect-based. But really, it's just educated guesses. Oda may just have a lot of different branches for a lot of different paramecias, and just some soft trends like material-based users generally being able to change their surroundings specifically. I would also add that even though greater variety is being introduced, I still believe it's likely that Luffy's awakening as a rubber man would be more likely to change his surroundings into rubber rather than his opponents, simply because the closest Devil Fruit user to Luffy throughout the series is Katakuri, in terms of the similarity of their abilities. Oda made it fairly clear throughout the fight that their abilities are essentially a mirror of each other, and so I would expect Luffy's awakening to look something like Katakuri's. It also makes a bit more sense with Luffy's fighting style in my opinion. As Luffy is a physical combatant, I don't know if Oda would ever give him hacks abilities like changing his opponent into rubber or something. Whereas Luffy turning his surroundings into rubber so that Luffy can bounce off them and increase his power and speed seems very in line with Luffy's fighting style. This is, after all, something we've seen before with Bellamy. And it should be noted that Gear 4th Boundman in the first place is a very clear parallel to Bellamy's abilities. It is no coincidence that Bellamy was such an important part of the Dressrosa arc, and one of the main emotional triggers for Luffy during the Doflamingo fight, though you can hear more about that in this analysis video. And finally we have Logias. So no confirmed Logia awakenings to go off, but we do have information to go off. So for both Zone users and Paramecia users, it seems that awakenings amplify the unique aspect of that type of fruit. What I mean by that is that Zone fruits give their users the best physical combat boost, which is why awakened zones double down on that by further amplifying the physical stats boost of the fruit. Paramecia fruits give the user some sort of variety ability, like creating doors or making your body explode, and Awakening amplifies that ability so that you can extend that unique trait to things you previously couldn't, such as your surroundings or your opponents. So with Logia abilities, you have the ability to produce, turn into, and control a particular element. And so the amplification of that could just mean doing the same thing but more, so creating more fire, more lightning, etc. Or maybe it's a little more specific, as others have speculated before, such as changing the climate itself based on your element. We do have multiple cases of Logia users affecting the climate of an island. The first time we heard of it was Ace in Drum Kingdom, a snowy island that strangely did not snow while Ace was there. The more blatant example was of course Akainu and Aokiji reshaping the climate of Punk Hazard to be half volcanic, half icy. And finally, there is an unconfirmed example of the rain returning to Alabasta immediately after Crocodile's defeat, which is essentially a pure miracle as far as we know. So on paper, a lot of this makes sense. An awakened Fire Devil Fruit user makes the snow stop. An awakened Magma and Ice user turn an island into half and half climate split, and an awakened Sand user sucks up the moisture of a nation so that it doesn't rain. I think there is decent reason to believe that the cause of all these phenomena could be because these Logia users are awakened, as the unique trait of Logia fruits are that they give you the power over an element. So amplifying that concept to the next level may mean changing the literal elements around us in the atmosphere to shift towards your element. I think a small added reason to believe this may be the interesting coincidence in the order of how we heard about certain events in the story. We heard Ace stopped the snow in Drum Kingdom the entire day he was there, which was the arc right before we get to the land of Alabasta, where we find out the rain in Alabasta has been stopped for 3 years, which conveniently is resolved as soon as Crocodile is defeated. So it's possible that the little Ace moment in Drum Kingdom was Oda foreshadowing for the problem afflicting Alabasta. However, this is not a theory video, this is just my best guess at what Logia Awakenings seem like they could be based on past information and what we know now about how other awakenings work. The weather theory has been around for a bit, and I think it's being further confirmed the more we learn about other awakenings. I will say you could easily make counter arguments to the idea of awakened Logias affecting the weather. The Crocodile moment, where the rain returned after he's defeated, could very well simply have been symbolic, much like nature healing after Scar is defeated in The Lion King. It's more just poetic rather than the villain specifically having been doing something to change the weather. So you just need a bit of suspension of disbelief, which we are all very, very used to in One Piece. The snow stopping in Drum Kingdom isn't a big deal necessarily, as that could just be a one-time thing for Oda to hype up a Fire Devil Fruit user, rather than really turning that into an ongoing, consistently used ability to change the weather. And lastly, with Akainu and Aokiji, yeah, they revamped Punk Hazard's climate, but like, they also fought for 10 days. Regardless of awakening, that's just a lot of magma and ice being thrown around. Obviously, the island's going to look different at the end. Like, Sabo's not an awakened user, but if you had Sabo fight on an island for 10 days, yeah, the whole place would probably be on fire by the end. So really, we can't prove that Logia awakenings mean you can change the climate, but I definitely think it's a good possibility and definitely follows a similar trend to how Zoan and Paramecia awakenings work. And I would add that it's interesting that Dragon always seems to have a lot of wind around him for no real reason. We don't know if Dragon has a wind fruit, though a lot of small panels suggest it. Maybe he can cause winds through some other reason, but it is interesting that the same way it didn't snow on Drum Kingdom when Ace was there, for some reason it's just always windy when Dragon is around. But again, it's not proof that this is Logia awakening, simply because this could be artistic license by Oda to kind of hype up or hint at a character's abilities, or even just the nature of the character that Dragon always brings the storm, etc. So if you enjoyed this video, then definitely like, comment, and subscribe for more videos like this every week.